Hello and welcome to, well, not rolling in mills I suppose. This is an update video for the direction of this channel, why it is so moody with the lighting here, a mystery to both you and I. So for those who are interested in the sorts of videos I'm going to be posting, the kind of direction I've been going in, will be going in, the sort of things you can expect for the coming year plus, hopefully, then stay tuned for this. If not, if you're just kind of subscribing for the typical stuff I post and you're not particularly interested, please ignore this. Okay, first and foremost, this isn't super depressing. It just happens to be that this lighting setup makes it look like I'm staring into the literal pits of hell. This is actually like a relatively light update video. There aren't enormous changes happening, which I'll be getting into of course, but I just want to be able to document and explain exactly what is going to be happening. Essentially, at the gist of this, I'm going to be cutting down on the amount of spoken word reviews I am doing. Now, before you go, what? Oh my god, why? There are multiple reasons for this, and also I don't think it's inherently bad. In fact, I think by doing this, I'll actually be producing a lot better content. You may have noticed if you've been following me for a little over 4 to 5 months now, I've been focusing a lot on doing reviews of Criterion films, e.g. films that are being released by the Criterion collection. And initially that kind of started out as this idea for the kind of Criterion preview style I have, where I went, hey, this is great. I'll talk about the releases that are coming up for each month, and then on the back side of that, people will be able to see my full opinions on each film. In theory, I think that's a pretty good idea for a series, but the only issue with that is that Criterion release 4 to 5 films a month, which requires me to do 4 to 5 videos a month just on that, plus the Criterion preview, which takes a lot longer to edit than one would expect, and what I actually expected when I first started doing this. At first, it was pretty easy to keep up with that schedule of releasing that amount of videos, but at the same time, I was releasing reviews of these films weeks to months in advance of when they were being released on Criterion. I wasn't sitting down within the same month and reviewing them, which is a lot harder. Essentially, it just ended up being that the work started kind of piling on and it became very mechanical, and I'm inherently against the over-mechanization of the creative process. I definitely like to have a process. I have, a specific style of the way I edit my reviews, the way that I, bookend them with intros, credits, the scores, all that sort of thing. All of that is a consistent aesthetic. The only issue was I was just editing constantly for these things, and it became very, very routine. And the other issue was that at the beginning, yet again, the films that Criterion were releasing were honestly just some really perfect review films. Now, I should note that the sort of film that's good for me in particular to review fits into a very specific category. I can watch a fantastic film and not have a fantastic review for it, or enough to talk about for a spoken word review. The most recent example is Fox and Friends from Fassbinder, and I remember finishing this and just thinking, I love this film, but I don't even possibly know what I could say about it. Arbitrariness is one of the very, very few things that I absolutely despise in this world, and I just hate the fact that I would have to sit down, essentially, and review a film that I didn't think I had enough content for. I think you can see that in the Heart of a Dog review, actually. I literally sit down and go, I don't know what to say about this film. The film's pretty self-explanatory, and I was kind of hinting at that a little bit in the His Girl Friday review. So essentially, the early films I was reviewing were fantastic. Like Shortcuts is a really cool film to talk about. McCabe and Mrs. Miller, even something like Boyhood, made really good reviews because they have a lot to talk about from my perspective at least. But basically, as a TLDR, I just don't want to talk about films that I have nothing to say for. Or the other issue was, I thought, for something like Black Girl, which is not really a film you can review, but to analyze perhaps in like an essay form, it would be very interesting. But the issue with that is that I've just got this huge list of, unstarted, partially started projects on film analysis, and if I were to stop and do a Black Girl, say, analysis in long form, I would have to push all of those aside just for that, and it would just take so long, and also I wouldn't have the time because I'd have to be doing 5, 6, 7 videos a month. Essentially, at the ground level, I'm not basically going to be reviewing any film I don't think I can talk about it. I think that's kind of self-explanatory, and it really took a while for me to get to that period because the films before were largely talkable, but I think this idea kind of came to me with the Tree of Wooden Clogs review. I kind of went into that and just went, yeah, that was a really good film. I don't really have an enormous amount to say for that. So essentially, I'll only be doing reviews on the Criterion films that I think I have enough substance to talk about. I'll still be watching all of them. I'll still be doing the Criterion preview so you can kind of hear my light thoughts on the films there. So you're thinking, okay, what happens if there are no Criterion videos in a month that you want to talk about, which is entirely possible. Essentially for me, just, man, to come at this from like the broadest angle, the sort of reviews I've always wanted to do were for films that were obscure and I felt were either underappreciated or I had something to say about them that hadn't been said before. Because my biggest, I'm not sure if you'd call it a fear, but my biggest concern creatively was basically falling into the thousands of other pretty shit YouTube critic channels that just do the first day release Marvel superhero movies, whatever the fuck, and they all have the same fucking thumbnails and voice and style of editing. I'm sure some of them are good, and I typically don't watch these people, and they also serve a purpose. I don't blame them from a business perspective. It's smart to do reviews of films if they're gonna get views and you're gonna get money out of it. But for me at least, it was just not wanting to do that style of thing and basically wanting to do whatever the fuck I wanted or whatever the fuck interested me. But obviously with what I was saying before with the Criterion thing, I was forcing myself to do reviews of films that were so obscure or so untalkable about. Like, I was just watching Something Wild and I was looking on Letterboxd and it had like 163 views, and it's an interesting film, but I'm like, this is both unreviewable and who wants to watch this? Like, who wants to watch me talk about a film that they've never heard of 4 to 5 times a month? And that's the other issue for me, I suppose, is from a subscriber basis, kind of what people are looking for. About 60% of my views come from about 4 video essays I've done. I'm pretty happy with them. I think they're by far the highest quality content I do in the shortest period of time. I think that there are reviews where I say more, but it just happens to be that a 30-minute talking head review is a lot less accessible than a very, very tightly edited and constructed video essay. And my biggest, I'm not sure if I call it nightmare, but the image I have in my mind is someone who subscribes for a video essay and then they just see a bunch of reviews in their subscription feed, like, you know, 4 to 5 a month, and it's completely kind of not what they signed up for, and the films are films that they've never really heard of. So the synthesis of all of those ideas, and as I'm making this up on the spot, the essential idea is that you'll be able to go to my Twitter feed, which will be linked in the description or at this handle, and reply to a pinned tweet that asks you to give me 5 films that you think would make either good reviews or you would be interested in hearing me talk about. Now, I should stipulate that a good review doesn't necessarily have to be of a good film. In fact, there are many good films that I don't think I'd have a lot to talk about. In fact, I often have a lot more to talk about particularly bad films that are bad in interesting ways. Now, I'm not talking about like a Shyamalan style bad film, though I guess that would be welcomed, maybe. The only reason I've never done like a Last Airbender review or an After Earth review is that they've been done better by other people, better than I possibly could, and they're kind of easy targets to pick on. One of my favorite reviews that I've done is the Beyond the Black Rainbow review, or even the X-Men Apocalypse review, where I'm just absolutely trashing the films. It's kind of refreshing. So feel free to send me anything on either spectrum of good or bad. The main idea is that it's interesting to talk about, or there are things that you think I could somehow elucidate or would be unique from my perspective, I suppose. And this might be a little bit of a hard task to give you guys. So essentially that's like the fundamental idea of what I'll be doing for film reviews. Hopefully that's satisfying for people and people aren't too disappointed that I'm kind of cutting Criterion stuff, but I'm replacing it with stuff that should be of higher quality or of higher interest, I suppose. Now, the fundamental other upside that I haven't really talked about is that I'm going to be able to produce a lot more specialized written narrated content like video essays and just like other analysis and written script videos. Sadly, I've kind of had to cut down on these a lot because I would be so busy, and often often like just hitting schedule on some things or going completely late. Like the Criterion previews were coming out after all the films came out. Like that's not a preview, what the fuck? Like that is the fundamental opposite of what that is meant to be. It's meant to be pre, like fucking before they come out, like woo. And for that reason I basically couldn't just sit down and write these very time consuming and these kind of creatively exhausting video essays. I managed to write the It Follows one as of like a month and a bit ago, but like I said, I've just got a backlog of so many things I want to talk about, and there are so many interesting things that I'm now exceedingly hyped to get out. I'm currently writing a long form analysis and 2 video essays at this point as a result of cutting down on reviews, and they should be coming out across the next couple of weeks, hopefully, if everything goes to plan. Hopefully the new era that we're moving into is still to your tastes. And yeah, that's it. Yet again, the Twitter link will be in the description and I'll post that pinned tweet pretty shortly. And yeah, au revoir.